Truth Talks. Please, I'm excited about the Truth Talks. They are addressing true fellowship and what it means, what true fellowship and corporate worship looks like according to the Bible.
All right. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. So, as we move forward, I believe we're in chapter 3 or finishing up 3 and a little bit of 4. Probably going to roll into 5 really quick. The reason why I say this is because this is the administrative side of the house, similar to the Chronicles. When we were putting everything in order, saying David was establishing this person here, that person here, putting, the people over in charge of who's who, daughters are being married, generations of things to come are being set up right here in what Solomon is doing. Because Solomon is establishing what is going to be the light of the world, Jerusalem, a city that everyone knows that this temple is made of gold, so precious in gold that gold has become wasteless. Silver is just silver. People looking on the ground like, oh, look, there's a piece of silver. I mean, if we walk around nowadays, we barely see pennies on the ground, let alone a nickel. But this was a time where silver was just like, here's some silver. They don't need it. And they would just walk by it because it had become that precious because of the inpouring, not because of what Solomon was doing, because of the inpouring of everything that David had did to establish what Solomon needed to do going forward. So let's talk about this house that Solomon is getting ready to put together. So we've seen Solomon wisdom on a physical level. Hey, cut the baby in half. What? Oh, that's eventually we've seen that matter come to head. But now we're going to see how Solomon's wisdom is the same as what David's was as we start to see the assignments and the people in it. And I'm not going to go over all of them. We're just going to talk about a quick few, not even in depth, just some of the jobs they have. Jehoshaphat, we're at 4-3. Jehoshaphat, he was a scribe, but he was the son of Elud, the recorder. So these people are still in the family. Remember in the previous Chronicles, when they were all going there, how many people wanted to do the job? But you have to set somebody at the head of the job so that the job itself, as it goes down, everybody knows where they are. Because if you got jobs to be done, here's how we see it. We put people where they are. Rulers over the music, rulers over the priests, rulers over the principal office. And these are the things that a king in his daily business, he knows has to get done. This is how the temple is going to run. This is how the community of the people of Judah and Israel. Anybody else noticed that? Notice that the distinction we're starting to see? Judah and Israel, we're starting to see division. Whether you notice it, one of them things that always, like people say, man, they'll try to slide something by you in word only. And you might read it and be like, hey, that's cool. But before, were we reading Judah and Israel? We were? No, it was just Israel. Everything was about the whole Israel as a whole, the body of Israel, how Israel conducted business, how Israel was the family. How is it? What we see now, Judah and Israel. And why are we seeing this distinction? Because who house has been tagged to build the house? King Solomon. It's David's house, and the house is under Judah. Just like when we heard when Saul was there, it was Benjamin in Israel. I don't want you to ever think that the division is new, but this division is something new in this atmosphere of going forward. Meaning when they picked the king previous to, it was understood that this is Benjamin by the tribe, but it's still Israel as a whole, because you are a new nation. But we're starting to see a little bit of division. We're going to see how Solomon starts to set everything up for his reign and how he starts to collect and amass and bring things into the kingdom and gear and store up things that weren't supposed to be stored up. And I'm not talking about the things of the temple. Of course he has all that. This was his mission. I say we look at people of the scriptures, and a lot of times we hit the mistakes they made. Solomon had 700 wives. He prayed here, he prayed this, and he did that. Yep, he sure did. But Solomon did the one thing that he was told to do obediently. And we see this completed here in this next chapter. As we see he's assigning everybody that's going to said name temple, we're going to start to see Solomon get the provisions getting ready to come up. But let's talk about Solomon wisdom, all right? Try not to skip too many important parts here. They're all important, so yeah. So he had oxen. He's bringing anything. If you go to 25 of chapter 4, 425. This was after all of the people assignments, the slaughters being made. And here we say in 25, and Judah and Israel dwelt safely, every man under his vine, his fig tree from Dan even to Beersheba, all of the days of Solomon. Remember, that it seems like a very small line, but what did God tell Solomon he would be? He would have wisdom, but he would be more important than having wisdom. He would be a man of peace. Do you see right here saying that in David's time, if David stepped to some borderlines or some place, it was automatic war. David, you brought your people here. It must mean it's time for war. But when Solomon seen these as his borders, the people started to be receptive. Solomon, we're acknowledging you, what you're doing in the world. Remember, for acknowledgement from another royal leader, it wasn't saying, hey, we're just going to send you some stuff how we see it now. The UN calls up, America says we need. They say, all right, well, here's some stuff. And this, it was the reverence of who this stuff was being sent to, because the people understood what was being sent wasn't for that king. It was for that king's greater purpose. Let's backtrack a little bit to show that understanding, right? We look at when the two spies went into town, and Rahab, remember the prostitute who held them up on the wall, she didn't say, I do this because I know who you two are. She said, I do this because I've heard of what Israel has done to all these other nations, and I don't want to be like that because I know not you, but your God. So when we see these kings giving this type of reverence to the people, it's not to Solomon, even though Solomon is the name in the book. Hey, if God wanted to say, you know what, boop, Petey's in the Bible, throw it back here, Solomon standing right here, y'all be getting Bible study by Solomon, and they would use the name Petey. You get what I'm saying? It's never, we see the people of the Bible, they are important. But look at what the people around them are saying about them. It's not you we're giving this to. We know you're building the temple for the one true living God. Us, who have kingdoms of our own, who have all little deities in our things. We know that all of this nonsense we see here in our kingdom, yours is greater. Take our resources. When the kings would give away their resources, it's basically giving away their livelihood. These resources was used to build up strong walls. Remember, in the next chapter, we're going to see tree bark and builders and workers coming in from Lebanon. This means this king said, my kingdom I lay bare, because anybody can attack it at this moment, because I'm giving you the builders along with the sojourners that's already there to build up this kingdom. So we see an influx of even more Gentiles to come in and to do the work. But again, these Gentiles aren't being sent in because of Solomon. It's being sent in because they know who the work is for. So when you see that, when you see it, you start to see the building of this temple as more than just being a construct. You start to see these deals as more than just being someone sending lumber to help you build a temple. No, this effort is an understanding. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying Hiram is falling to his knees, and we're looking at him as the next person in the scriptures that somebody should take a note of and make a whole little teaching about. No, I'm showing that the reverence of what is being done is being understood throughout the world by those who hold the resources. David himself, before death, he lived a life gathering up resources, not to spend, but to put for this moment, not for Solomon, but for this moment. The success of Solomon was done before Solomon was even put into office, because things around him. Because who made this relationship that Solomon gets the benefit from? Don't worry about it. I'll tell you. I like telling the story as it goes. What was that thing on The Living Color? When I hear, here it go, and he just started. All right. So here at the 25, they talk about Solomon, how Judah became province. Solomon had 40,000 stalls of horses. This is the things people are massing up. Chariots, 12,000 horsemen, and all of those officers provided victuals for King Solomon. This was for that big day. And for all that came to King Solomon's table, every man in his month, meaning this is coming in. These are regular meetings that Solomon is having with people saying this is what this kingdom is going to look like going forward. The very next in 29, we start talking about more of Solomon's wisdom. Right? How wise he is, meaning as these people are coming in on these monthly meetings, they're coming in for these visits, they're seeing that this person not just has wisdom to build a temple, but he has wisdom given to him by God. Because a lot of these temple constructs, when you think about it, temples were not being made like this. When we think about Nebuchadnezzar, the Greek conquest, Assyrian conquest, Who else? Because there was a lot of conquest going on there. People was just coming in. That land was ripe and beautiful, and they had settled in it. And it was like, okay, this is where we can go fight, take, and we'll see that coming up. But this land, this temple, what was being done here was something that wasn't done in previous kingdoms. We've seen the other kings build, but we've never seen them lay everything with gold. And there was a reason for that. Anybody know the reason why Jerusalem was laid, everything was gold on the inside? Why it was supposed to be so shiny?
You gonna explain it to us?
No, that's no fun. I mean, some things I give you, some things I don't. But like, if you just think about it, why a temple sitting on a hill laden in gold?
Very bright. Very
Why?
See it.
Bright and shiny, right? It's a jewel. It was a jewel sitting right there. But what was the reason for this being the bright and shiny jewel? If nothing else, what was it to do? Well, let's see. If I'm in the desert, this is me in the desert, and I'm nomading with my little nomad family, and say, hey, and we look up and say, ah, we've never seen something so bright. There you go. It's what they were supposed to be. Remember what Israel, Jacob, keep going back. We can always we can trail this all the way back to Adam. What was the purpose? Glorify God, but also to get people to what? If I'm walking this way and I see a bright light even behind my shoulders, I'm going to do, oh, I must be going in the wrong direction. Jerusalem is there. That's why when we hear people saying getting put out of the city, it wasn't like, oh, you're getting put out of the city, I'll just go ahead and move to North Carolina or from North Carolina to New York. It was literally, I'm getting put out of the city and I'm going to, yeah, just like that. Just like that. You leave the city. We are so comfortable being able to cross a border now in our modern time to get up, but this was important. Home was important. House business, it was important. So Solomon is letting everybody know that in the building of this is the center of this importance you see when you walk into the city. This is the heart. And if the heart is crooked, because you'll see that the priests started to do what they wanted to do in the temple. And if the heart became crooked, well, what happened when people turn now? Even though it's bright and shining, it's a what? He said, you have made it a, well, we ain't get that far yet, but we getting there. Let's build a house before we start tearing it down. All right. So we go, talk about that, straw, horse, yep, all right. Solomon started getting a lot of stuff. So in 29, right, it says God gave Solomon, who gave? God. There it is, full enough. God gave Solomon wisdom and understanding exceeding much and largeness of heart. And as the sands of the sea. And Solomon wisdom excelled in the wisdom of children of the east country. Now, I looked that up. In the east country, it was men, diviners, wisdom. I mean, these guys were sitting around and all they did all day long, even in that era, was study script, study text, study everything from all the books, trees, snakes, whatever was out there, they documented. Oh man, this is a leaf. They could go and they say, well, that leaf has this many leaves. And they would study it. And Solomon would just show up already knowing it. Like, can you imagine that? Like you sitting out there years of like picking up leaves and holding them up. Like this one is the star leaf and it's beautiful because it's shaped like a star. And this one is, I don't know, I'm starting to itch a little bit. Let's call this one poison ivy. You know, and they naming them and Solomon's just walking by. I'm like, that one's poison ivy. I won't touch that one. That's a nice star leaf. And you're looking at this guy like, what? How you know all that? And I'm like, it's wisdom and stuff. So when we see what Solomon was doing, he was carrying something early in the game that a lot of people didn't understand. Like if somebody, now where else do we see something like this in the scriptures? Yeah, Adam, he named them. But where do we see somebody just was sitting there with just an over-amounting wisdom amongst the wise men? In fact, he almost got in trouble for it because his mom had to come back from a 3-day journey. Christ. He was sitting there amongst the wise, and they say, hey, man, this one speaks as a teacher. Solomon was sitting amongst the wise as a child. Remember, Solomon is still a kid. For those kings and everything to acknowledge that, they're not acknowledging Solomon. It might not make an allegiance. It might not be their confession, but they understand who they are working with, for, and if you cross against. And we'll see that because we're going to start to see a rule that keeps getting uttered to Solomon. Hey, Solomon, thanks for building my temple. Oh, yeah, anytime, God, great. And, my dad, he was faithful. He did this. Solomon, I love you. Just keep my command. That's all I ask. Sure, God, I got you. No problem. This is an easy thing to do. I'm going to keep this command. I'm going to do everything you say. I'm going to go marry 700 women. No, Solomon, I didn't say that. I'm going to amass gold. No, Solomon, I didn't say that. So we'll see that this thing that crept in very small was something enough to crack the foundation of an entire line. All right. So Solomon got his wisdom from God. And Solomon excelled in the country. He was so smart, he was smarter than all the people in the East. Now, if you look at all the people in the East, I want y'all to take a look at this pink map right here. I know it's hard. Don't look at it. Just focus on the colors. Don't worry about the camera. You ain't got to turn this way. Trust me. I'm probably going to look ugly. But if you look at this, I want y'all to understand that this is like he's working these people in Egypt. Now, you see this blue line, right? That's still family. Some of the people over in the East, the Far East, you ever heard what's called the Far East? That's still family. So this wisdom that he's knowing in his era and his time, it's going out to the people. And the people are, hey, this is coming in from that. So you get what I'm saying? I just wanted to point that out because it's still family. Don't forget, all of these people are connected. The information is going out amongst the people. This is still God's people. And you see why here we mention the East. We also mention Egypt. Still reaching back to the lands because everybody came out of Egypt. All firstborn died. But remember, did every Hebrew come out of Egypt? Some stayed. So again, this is also the mission to illuminate back to the homecoming. You are outside. Come in. This is why this temple was so important. It was a focal point for all of Israel to see and be a beam like that light. E.T. finger, home, you know, it was there. It was letting you know where it was at. So not only you knew if you went home, you would receive such a beautiful temple, a beautiful kingdom. You also knew wisdom was there, wisdom that exceeded all the lands around it, all the way from the east and up to Egypt. Okay. All right. For he was wiser than all the men. And he spoke 3,000 proverbs. That's a lot. That's a lot. Do we have 3,000 proverbs in the Bible? If you break it down how the books were written, right? Each line is a proverb. So let's go to Proverbs to see if we got 3,000. We got 3. No, we're not going to count on that. We'd be here all day. But let's just go and see how the Proverbs, do we have 3,000? Or how can we get 3,000? Is this claim that they saying Solomon wrote 3,000 Proverbs, is it tough to do? I guess. You say, yeah, maybe. Solomon, you couldn't have wrote 3,000 Proverbs. And I say this because when we talk about the wisdom, we see that Solomon writing of the Proverbs, or some that may even came from David or whoever, you think they're long. But Proverbs was just like this. My child, be attentive to my wisdom. And this is Proverbs 5. I'm just reading one. Incline your ear to my understanding, so that you may hold prudence and your lips may guard knowledge. Proverb 1. You see what I'm saying? That's one proverb. That is one proverb right there. That is something you can take the wisdom from that, expound on it, teach on it, make lessons of life of it. You can go through each part of each proverb, stay on just one part from beginning of a sentence to period, and literally meditate on it and say this: how does this one thing that was just said change my life? Well, I tell you one that changed mine. You know, and this was one before I was even reading the Bible to the level that I do read or I do study. And it was one that it came across and it was like, wow, I get it. In the midst of my suffering, this is what it's saying. Proverbs 3:11-12. My child, do not despise the Lord's discipline or be weary of reproof. For the Lord reproves the one he loves, and as a father, the son in whom he delights. So when I first read this proverb that Solomon laid on my life, I had to understand everything I go through, it may be reproving and refining in my life. It's not some doom torture from Satan who came to ruin my life and construct me and tear me up. I might have need some reproving from my father. I may be error in my way, in my walk. So that reproving came and I should delight in it because it's from my father. Yeah, I got this whooping. You know, I've never been a happy kid to get it. I think it was one. I got like one beat and I was like just ready to get it because I knew I did it. I knew it was going to happen. I might as well have planned a whooping. I was like, so Mom, what time you whooping me? 5 o'clock? Because I got some punishment time I want to spend alone in the house. And she was looking at me like, you really telling me what time to whoop you? I'm like, come on, we ain't got time. You got to cook dinner. Like, let's get this ball rolling. And I got that whooping too. And it did not go as good as I thought I was. Just because you plan it and you tell people, you're like, yeah, I'm gonna comfort myself. Like, none of that work. None of that work. You never can like get your hands in the right place. But it goes to say this. Whatever my mom was disciplining me, she wasn't doing it out of anger. It was love. All right. Sometimes, you know, it's hard to see that. Now, sometimes I was just getting a purity whooping because I deserved it. Sometimes you got to take it off the books. But I say that because we see when it says Solomon wrote 3,000 Proverbs, if you took just one, beginning to period, you might be in the book of Proverbs forever. So a lot of times when people are coming to me and they say, man, you know, I read the book of Proverbs. I read all of this. I said, wow, you learned every proverb. What do you mean? I read one. I said, yeah, you learned every one that was in that one. It was like, what do you mean? I thought it was all one. Like it is. One long thing of a bunch of proverbs that will change you accordingly. If you go step by step, it's a long process. So I normally tell a lot of people, I say, look, if you're reading the scriptures, and as you dig in there, before you start getting into them proverbs, get to some of the other books first. Because a lot of go for it.
But there's 915 verses in Proverbs. Mm-hmm. Like you said, Solomon wrote 3,000. However, he only have 800 in the Bible. So you find the rest of them in the non-canonical.
Mm-hmm. It's out there. So it's a lot of information. We can't 800 just in there. And I think how many books in Proverbs? 30. So he got 800 just in that book alone. So you understand the value of the Proverbs. Proverbs wasn't what we think. People, you know, we hear this type of proverb. What Proverbs was wisdom given to change you. It might not have been something. You ever bump into somebody, they just give you a quick line? Hey, man, if you like Tutti Frutti on a Thursday, you might want to go get it on Wednesday. It's cheaper. You be like, see? It was funny enough for everybody to laugh, and it sounded crazy, but everybody know what day we going to get Tutti Frutti. There you go. You see, it's those little things, but imagine this man has the wisdom to say, that's poison ivy, and that's a star leaf. And also the wisdom to say, I was smart enough not to pick it up first. I don't have the itching problem. He had the wisdom that God bestowed on him. So we see this writing of these proverbs. It shouldn't be a mystery. Again, I speak to this as if it's a great mystery, but it's not. Look who he has as the person that's giving him his wisdom. So of course it sounds great. It's guidance for us to live by. But that's it. That's where the Proverbs come from. All right. And a lot of other Proverbs, some came from David. Some came from the other priests in the temple, the writers. Wisdom was bestowed on a lot of the believers. But as they penned it in there, we see that Solomon was one of the ones that wrote the most. You got the most wisdom. Of course you're going to write a lot. I mean, how many of us, we come here, we sit in church, and we think that, you know, I call it the hot pen. You put your pen down for a second, but the next thing you know, you pick it up, you write in this verse, your hand is just going like this. So can you imagine the outpour of information before it even existed onto paper? Solomon was sitting there and was like, man, I don't know, God, I asked for wisdom, but you're making me too smart. We'll see that. We will see. All right. And he spent, for otherwise men, And he spake 3,000 proverbs, and his songs were 1,005. He was a writer, so he not only had proverbs, he got Beyonce beat. My man, how many songs he got? 1,005. so think about this in concert phase or the mindset, man. Solomon would have been touring in the modern day with 1,005 songs. He would have had a catalog. What song y'all playing from Solomon today? I don't know. Play one of the good oldies, one of the hits, one of the ones he got. He got 1,000 something songs. Pick one. He had a hit track. And he spoke of trees, the cedars that is in Lebanon, even unto the hyssop. Hyssop was a branch. A lot of times they would use it or they clean his skin, different things. You hear in David, when David says, make me white, like with hyssop, meaning to cleanse me. It was one of them things that cleaned you up. So when you see these proverbs, you see that a lot of the times they spoke of these trees and it goes in there really quick. And you're like, what that tree got to do with anything? Why are we being specific? Well, the wood in Lebanon was very strong, very sturdy. It did not break. It did not fold. Once it was crafted into the way, it was almost strong as steel. So to overlay it with gold is already saying we have the strongest piece of tempered wood that can stand any test of weather, time, storm, and then we're going to overlay it with the most precious metal in the world. You see how things are starting to come together now? Wait until we get inside. It's going to be sounding crazy. Like, he decorated this with gold and beat that with brass and had files. And I mean, it's just, the temple is just beautiful on the inside. We have pictures up there, but allow me to go through the scriptures and allow you to use your imagination to see what we can. If it gets difficult, yeah, we go to the pictures. If not, we'll just keep rolling on. In the spring of the wall, he spoke also of beasts, the fowl, the creeping things. Like Solomon was basically, what did you say earlier? Adam, right? He was speaking of things that Adam spoke of. He's speaking of the birds, the fowls, the air. He's telling them about things that they see every day with no explanation. He's telling them those things. And there came of all people to hear the wisdom of Solomon from all the kings of the earth, which had heard his wisdom. Again, to have kings to come out to this young man. It's not so much Solomon's. Yes, they may have been coming out to see the man himself, but what they are really coming to see is the glory and the awe of God. How many people you think might have went out there and when they saw it for the first time, they said, you know what? I think I'm going to go ahead and stay here because this is where God is. We might not hear stories of it. Actually, we are going to hear a story of it later on with some other kings, but you hear that the people who hear of God, when they hear, they don't want to leave where it's at. So imagine the beauty that's being built there. All right, Solomon's agreement with King Hiram, chapter 5. King Hiram is the king of Tyre. He sent his servants unto Solomon, for he heard that they had anointed him king in the room of his father. Hiram was an ever lover of David. Now, if you go back to 2 Samuel 5, I think it's like 11, they talk about that relationship. All right, we don't have to dig into it. Just know this man had a great respect for David. His respect for David and his love for David overpoured so much that he was willing to still help his son. Remember, this is not something he had to do. But these are the things he heard. I heard that Solomon has been anointed in David's place. Excuse me. I love David. David was a friend of mine. And if this was David's choice in life, then I will respect it. I will take care of his son in any way that I can help. And this way I can help is I have the superwood that you need, and I will send as much of it. Not only do I have the superwood, I have the same passion and vision that I will say the people from my kingdom will come and build in your kingdom. These are the things and the little richness in the lines when you read it and you think about the royalty and how kings work. This king here is saying, here are my servants that I utilize to build in my kingdom. I see your purpose is greater. Take them. Here is the wood that I use to build up in my kingdom. The purpose in your kingdom is greater. We see that echo because he said, I love David. And what did David say? Here's all the things I amassed. It's not for me, but the purpose of your kingdom is greater. So we see that here. Yes.
See, as you look at these verses, or have you read 5? Solomon's message was telling him what his father had told him to do from the greater father. And that's the first portion of the message itself. And then the answer comes in when you start looking at the answer comes back from him, explaining, yeah, I considered your message and I'm willing to do this because of my love for your father.
And we get to 2, right? And Solomon sent around saying, thou knowest how David, my father, could not build a house unto the name of the Lord. Wait a minute. Haran is aware that David is not going to build a house. He has internal messages of what's transpiring, what's taking place. He knew that David wasn't going to be the one to build a house. This information is out there amongst the kings, which means David at some point said, the Lord did not choose me to build this house. He chose my son. Now, this king all the way over here got the message, but yet his brother didn't get the message, and that's kind of weird to me. How somebody, it's like in a time with no email, no text messages, somebody in Virginia getting a message that somebody in North Carolina didn't get, and they sitting right there at the same house. That's just weird. The more I read the Bible and expand my mind to be in the shoes of these people, not so much to be them, but to think of what they were thinking, and to think like that person wasn't thinking. And it's easy to jump on that person and say, you wasn't thinking. And then I didn't think all the time either. So the understanding starts to multiply. You start to learn from these people. You start to learn from these people about yourself, to not be so haughty or too quick to say this about someone, but to look at that person, reflect and say, am I making sure I'm saying everything that is in line with what I'm doing? Because what did Jesus say? You hypocrites. Whoa, wait a minute, Jesus, don't call me a hypocrite. So we see that the lining up of being what's said and done here is starting. The Lord said, build a house. Solomon said, I'm going to build a house because the Lord told me to, not my dad. And it's going to be done. The king said, we hear what the Lord told you to do. We understand what he told you what your dad to do. And we understand what you're doing. And we're going to get it done. A said, do type of community. And behold, all right, but now the Lord God has given, he's talking about this rest again. The Lord God, for the wars which are about him on every side. He's talking about his dad. He said, you can build it because everybody's trying to fight you. But we also know that God told him specifically, you shed blood, you can't do it. Your hands is dirty. Solomon's hands is clean. It says, but now the Lord my God has given me rest on every side, so that there is neither adversary nor evil occurrence. Now wait a minute. So adversaries and evil occurrence are two different things. All right, so we understand that some people could be adversary, and sometimes it could just be an evil occurrence. We have to we look at these things and are quick to go over, but these are little rich tidbits to let you know that everything that come against you, it may be an adversary, but it could also be just an evil occurrence. Evil occurrence is a whole nother conversation for a whole nother day. And behold, I purpose a house unto the name of the Lord my God. As the Lord spoke unto David, my father, saying, thy son, who will I set upon the throne in thy room? He shall build a house unto my name. Now, Solomon he did a little bit of what David did. He heard a prophecy. He knows what he has to do physically on earth, but it's like that fine tweaking. What house is being talked about here being built? Is it the one that Solomon is constructing now? Is that the house that's being talked about in that particular sentence? Let's read it again. But now the Lord God hath given me rest on every side, so that there is neither adversary nor evil occurrence. And behold, I purpose to build a house unto the name of the Lord my God, as the Lord spoke unto David my father, saying, thy son, whom I will set upon the throne in thy room, he shall build a house in my name. So we know he's building a physical house, but what part are we talking about? The prophecy going forward, right? We do know that when they spoke, a lot of the times we see the physical, the evident, what's in front of you. That is God saying, my word and what I say will be established. But it's also to say, if you see the physical, know that I'm also building the spiritual. So what Solomon is speaking to these kings who sit in a room, they only see a physical building. They only see the gold. I say this because that attraction turns into an evil occurrence, which brings the adversaries. You get where I'm going with this? The men who saw what Solomon was doing, who supported what Solomon was doing, they weren't evil men, but what they saw was the beauty of it, and their mind said to take. We see the wickedness in the heart, as we're going to see going forward, right? So when we see this, we see that I don't want you to think that this is the kingdom and it got destroyed and man, God, no, it's always been about the heavenly home, the spirit. This was just the proof that when God says, I'm going to do, I'll show you what I do here on earth to show you what can be done in heaven. Remember what Jesus said, what I do here, right, is for, there it is. We got it. I'm telling you, the Old Testament opened up everything. You see that these people was like, man, they were really walking it, living it, inspired by the left and the right of people who were doing it. Again, against the lawless people were inspiration too, to not do lawless things. Right?
Here, he's going to do for us in this sense. He gave Solomon rest, and that rest was assured by him not having adversaries on his side. So will we get that rest in the future eternity where we won't have any adversaries on either side. So just
I was riding with my nephew, and I was like, man, we was talking about heaven. And he said to me, he said, man, I want to go to heaven. There's no what? No pain. Everything good in heaven. The youth knows what heaven feels like. The scriptures tell us what's to come. We had examples in history of these things. If you can say, well, I don't know if I'm gonna have rest in my days, it's just so hard. It's like, hey, well, look back at Solomon. It can happen. If God said it can happen, then it will happen. You need proof. This is what the scriptures are for. Not to sit there and engage in, is Jesus real? Is this? No. This happened. Do you believe this happened here? That there was a temple built of gold? Has anybody in this room seen this temple of gold? Well, we believe it was there, right? Because we trust the promise that Solomon built a temple because God said so. And we've seen that promise come to life. Solomon was a man of rest because God said so. And we've seen that come to life. Solomon had peace all around him because he said so, because we've seen that come to life. We've seen Solomon sit on the throne because God said so. Why will we see so many promises that God has fulfilled? And all of these people, good, bad, or indifferent, why will we stop doubting when Jesus said, well, I am God, and I said so. Believe in me, and you're perfectly fine. You're good. Here it is. This is salvation. Easy as that. The Old Testament teaches us God said, God did. God said, God did. God said, God did. It's repetitive. So when you get to the New Testament, when God say, God do, you believe.
The thing about that is, you mentioned some people who may not believe that vessels of Jesus God, that we will be with him eternally in the kingdom. And you asked them, do you believe that Moses exists? And they say, yeah. And you asked them why, and they say, because the Bible teaches. So why you don't believe in the resurrection? The Bible teaches. So it's all about faith, and the only reason we do what we do now is about faith. So now we talk about the promises that you mentioned, no pain. That's foreign to us. No pain, no worry, no death, no adversaries. But it's called hope. That's a future faith, because why should we hope for that we already have? So we have faith for the stuff in the past, so it's not hope. But our future faith is called our hope. So it's in the Bible what has happened, and it's in the Bible what will happen. Mm-hmm. And so they both are faith on each end of this spectrum. But when the Bible talks about things like no pain, no adversaries, when we get rest, those things are to be sure promised us, and we should look forward to them. But if we put that as the pinnacle or the apex of why we want to get to heaven, we're still not getting it. Okay? The apex there would be with the Lord. Okay? But yet we still should look.
You know, and I get that. At the end of the day, that is the place of no pain. Yeah, that is the place of no pain. When you get to Revelations, you see that God said, I am the light of the city. I am the water that you need. These things go away. And we get that. And in the sense of what's being said, it's the understanding of what we see, the promises, the continuation of promise, whether it's a promise to do good, like was promised in Deuteronomy. If you follow these rules, you'll do good. If you don't, here's a whole list of bad things. And I promise you, I will give them to you. So when we see that, all the other things that fall under the arching umbrella of this promise, I'm just pointing them out. These are the Old Testaments where promises was made and kept to people of faith. Solomon was born. Solomon heard this. Solomon grew up every day, probably walking around being told, you're going to build the kingdom, son. We see that in a lot of the Proverbs and the Psalms. You're going to build this kingdom. So Solomon, have not doing something, has now took on the faith of accomplishment. But he did it with also understanding that God is there. Remember, God was David. God was with David. So as Solomon is being brought up, this tender flower to say, you're going to build this temple, he's also seeing his dad do things, but we only see that because we know the backstory. David had faith in an area where somebody else didn't. We see the continuations of other people's faith. And as we see it, we build on it because faith keeps growing, and it grew in Solomon because he's seen the faith that David had. But David had all the resources. So Solomon knew, hey, if I continue forward and do what God has told me to do, the things that he promised, he's going to deliver. It's been proven. Solomon was a kid. Everybody in here met Solomon as a baby. No temple was being bought. What is happening right now? This 16-year-old kid is sitting with kings, getting the lumber, getting everything. But if you go back in Deuteronomy, just a flip page, there is no Solomon. But the promise is made. The promise is made. And this is what we see in these Old Testament writings. We see promise after promise after promise after promise being kept. So when you get to the gospel, the good news of the coming of the Lamb of God, you understand that this is one promise, that if you've seen all those other promises, this is the one promise you know, without a doubt, is being kept. There's no question. So we see that in this building, that Solomon's operating on that faith. Look how he's talking. He's talking like, I got this. Nobody gonna bother me. He says it. He says, and behold, I build a house unto the Lord. My God, the house is not built. The house is not built. Not one, like we're gathering wood. Imagine the wood is just sitting out. It's not built. And look how Solomon is talking. Solomon has basically walked around that temple 50 times. Have you ever had that type faith? You already start kind of walking in things. Like, hey, I'm going to Bible study tonight. I know eventually, man, I put gas in my car. I know I can make it. The weather's good. I know I'm going to make it. And you get here. That's faith. That's faith in action. That's so much faith that you just willingly do because you know. But if we the guy here and the doors was closed and things was locked, right? That's a bump in faith. But don't mean that the faith you had is worthless. The promise was kept. You got to Bible study. You just couldn't get in. Door might have been closed, but you came with the purpose. So Solomon right here is building this temple off that faith to move forward for that purpose, the purpose of doing what was said to be done. So if you judge Solomon off of anything else, judge him off the obedience of doing what God told him to do. Solomon built a temple that is talked about in this modern age as one of the most magnificent temples in the world that no one's ever saw.
We see in here also the moving of the people to bring materials. It's actually the movement of God on their heart. You know, so God is not only moving Solomon's heart to do what he said he would do.
If you give me a second, we can talk about that. Let me take it for a bit. And Solomon's telling, hey, behold, I do this on my dad. Now, therefore, command thou that hew me cedar trees out of, like, cut the cedar, and my servants will be with your servants. See that connection there? My people will be with your people in the building of this temple. The people who said, now, who is these servants? Are they Israelites? No. Right, because Israelites, again, were just supposed to be people to represent it. When you come into the city, you build this city up, the one we're going to live in, the one the temple we're going to, by hands that are not Israelites. You build it up, we're going to worship there, we're going to do everything. I mean, it's going to be a big slaughter in there. You're going to bring other people that aren't Israelites to build in, you know, from other nations, and we're going to work. You see that this building, Solomon is saying, like, the people who are building this building, he's acknowledging it right there, that those aren't right, because Israel still has a purpose. We seen that verse back in this chapter when they was assigning everybody. You can't be out here trying to build the temple and trying to hold the service. Can you imagine? I mean, we seen what happened with that with Nehemiah, right? Yeah, they on a wall, they trying to build a wall. Hold up, I got the fire, ting, ting, ting. Grab the sword, it's too much. Sometimes the jobs have to be put in place and the workers have to be announced who's going to be the workers. Look, it says right here, your servants will be with my servants, and they will be, and unto thee I will give for thee a service according to all that shall appoint it. For thou knowest there is not among us any skilled nobody like the people you bringing in. So not only the servants I got, they're not like your servants. The servants you got, they're coming in and they're skilled to do so. They're skilled hands to build up this temple. They specialize in it. They specialize in making buildings look like this. So when God said this building was going to be built, Solomon didn't know he was going to have the best builders. He just knew the building was going to be built. Again, you see how this faith is starting to come alive. It's starting to operate. Something that was told to his father that he believed in his heart. He's utilizing the wisdom and the knowledge in the kingdom that God has given him to go forward and build this temple. This is how this is playing out. I know it sounds kind of, when you read it by yourself, you're like, man, this person is this and this person is this. It take a little bit.
The Bible says Solomon's gonna build the temple, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we see all this help he's getting. Do you think Solomon lifted one stone?
That is a very good question.
Now, I wanna ask a two-part question.
Well, part one, you want me to ask part one? Or you want
Listen to, I think.
Okay, what's the second part?
Young man, you can hold all this.
Okay.
You look back, no, that's healthy, I mean, health.
Mm-hmm.
You hear about Noah building the ark.
Right.
Yeah, do you think he lifted one piece alone? But just think about it. You know,
When I
Oh, yes.
when I think about what is being hewed, right? The wood and the stone. I think about the time of Noah versus Solomon. Noah in his time was a different type of person. You hear people always say it was a different type of man back in the day. We would go outside and we would build a house. Well, let me tell you, it was a different type of man back in Noah days. They would go outside and build a whole boat, big enough to hold all the animals in the ark. So in Noah's days, I think Noah, when we hear what it said, Noah built the ark. And yes, God oversaw what Noah was doing. So I don't know, maybe Noah had the strength of 30,000 men while he was up there twisting a piece of wood on his finger. Whatever happened, Noah had the strength to do it. Again, strength does not always look like what it looks like to Noah. But Noah and Solomon had the same strength. You want to know why? Noah used what was physically there for him to build an ark. Solomon used the thing that was given to him to build the temple. Wisdom. Why would I lift a hammer if I don't have to? It's not because I'm lazy. It's because I know people who are better than me building a hammer. Because I think like this, if we would have let Solomon go out there at the age of 16 building that temple, we might have had a temple that had all corners. Who knows? He might not have been an expert in it. But he was wise enough to say, well, you know what? I don't know how to do this as well as you do. Perfect example. Actually, an example that I learned from a lesson. So I was going through the Chiefs season, and they do these little rainbow games out there, right? So they have in like whoever's the worst person to select it. And I was that guy. I was the worst because I spoke my mind the entire season and didn't care because I knew it ended September 17th. So I just finished. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna finish. I'm gonna tell everybody the truth the whole time. And my wife would always say, I'm not coming. You just make things just difficult. But we had our little training. Now, I looked at them and I said this. This was the training. I was the worst recruit. I was in charge. Well, the select, I was in charge. And they said, y'all have to get these sandbags from point A to point B. I watched everybody that was with us in our little team start grabbing sandbags. We only had a certain amount of time running across. I said, this is insane. I said, it's not enough of us to run back and forth. What is the wisdom that is needed to be done in this exercise? Not the strength. They're looking for wisdom. Oh, okay, I get it. Hey, I know that I'm a select and you're the chief. Big whoop. Can I get your hand in service to form a daisy chain so that one bag can be passed down? You know what they said? That was the wisdom in it. That's what they were looking for. Someone, one, to say I need help. Someone, two, to organize the help that they got. Three, to make sure that at the end of the job, see when you're smart, people think you're not working, but I will walk the whole entire line. Hey man, are you good? I know it's enough out here. Hey chief, you think you could switch out here? I would get to the line and say, hey, if y'all building this like this, you know why it was more on me than anybody else? It seemed like I might not have been involved, but what it was is God, in that point, said, you're the wise one. What are you going to do with this wisdom? Are you going to stand here and just and try to work and make the job hard for everybody? Or are you going to use the wisdom that you got to accomplish this goal? So no, I don't think Solomon swung one physical hammer, but a mental hammer, he knocked it out of the park. He smashed every stone. In fact, he smashed them so good it said, and no stone were used to build a hew of these buildings. That's how good his wisdom was. He didn't need hammer and nail. He used the hammer and nail of his wisdom to build something great. So did he swing a hammer? The answer is no. But the wisdom that he swung, he had a king come over and said, I'll give you all the wood. And this is where I was getting to with this king. Because as you get down here with this king, and Solomon is saying, now therefore he commanded all his people appointed for thou, because we run out of time, said, and skill, hew, and timber, this is what the king said. And it came to pass when Hiram heard, he got the letter back. Remember, this isn't email, it's not fast track. It was a pigeon, like they would fly this pigeon, you go back. And when we look at the city, it's falling apart. We're going to look how important messages that get sent out by birds. Like back in the day, we take that funny. Mike Tyson, every time Mike Tyson said, I got my pigeons and I teach them how to do all types of stuff. Like Mike Tyson's a smart person because the internet go down. He could be making phone calls today. Just throwing pigeons everywhere. You're going to watch a whole flock. Like, look at all the Mike Tyson pigeons, man. That guy got unlimited wiring. You remember back in the day when you had like a certain amount of minutes? Mike Tyson had unlimited pigeons. Everybody can be like, I don't use my pigeon between 3 and 8. So when you think about this message, it's not fast. But this is what the message came back. And we're gonna put a pin here. We're gonna put a pin here. In the message. And Hiram said, he heard the words of Solomon. And that's all you really need, right? That he rejoiced greatly. But in his rejoicing, because BJ talks about rejoicing, right? In his rejoicing, he did something. He said, blessed be the Lord this day, which has given unto David a wise son. Man, come on, man. I'm gonna just close my book. Hey, thank y'all for rocking with me tonight. It's been great. He said, I gave him a wise son. He said the wisdom that is being done here to build this temple. This is the tool that is the greatest tool that Solomon had to be wise. But it was also a tool. Sometimes, they always told me when I was a kid, what they say, don't stick a screwdriver in an outlet, you get electrocuted. I guarantee it is true. I stuck an electric fork in there and it blew across the room. And that's the last day. That was the last day I didn't listen when people say don't do. But I thank y'all. Any questions for me? All right. I know we was rolling tonight. I try to make the best out of building temple. Wait till we get into putting all these walls together.